Hi, this is Joe Rabil from Rabil Stock Research, and I'm going to do your daily 5 today. I want to focus in on the S&P 500. I want to follow up last month's your daily 5. I mentioned I looked at the weekly chart of the S&P. Today, I want to really delve in and look at this index in multiple time frames, looking at momentum, volatility, and trend. So let's go right into the charts because we got 5 different charts I want to discuss. I've got them all up on this screen on ACP. Normally I would look at the higher time frame and work my way down. Because I'm going to look at volatility, I'm going to start with that. I want to focus in on a daily chart. And on the bottom scale, I've got the average true range. It's a 20 period average true range with an 18 moving average, simple moving average overlaid on top. And so what I wanted to do, I know most people look at the VIX as a way of analyzing volatility, and that's fine. If that works for you, that's great. I've found this to be a very useful tool to analyze what's sort of taking place. And a lot of times, what I really like to do and where I find power in indicators is when I can draw trend lines on them and look for changes in trend in an indicator and come up with the same kind of conclusions that I would if I were looking at price. So I can do that on this ATR, and I can draw in a trend line and look for a shift in trend. And essentially, I want to zero in on first the top before the market crashed in 2020, just as an example, where we come down, we make a lower high and then go to a new low, and we trend lower, and you can draw a trend line in place. And then typically I'm looking for a 1, 2, 3 shift in trend. And that's where you break the trend line and then come back, test the moving average or test the trend line and make a higher low and then turn back up and go through to a new high. That's essentially a shift in trend. And when that takes place, it's telling me that the volatility is shifting to the upside. And so I'm looking for that kind of confirmation. But when the ATR is rising above its moving average, it's telling you that risk levels are elevated because we are getting higher volatility taking place. So if we go to where we are right now, we've broken a trend line. We have rising volatility right now, and the moving average is rising. So I would consider this to be somewhat negative in the way that it's developed. What's missing for me is I just kind of want to see, some kind of a pullback test and then move back up to a new high and get a full-fledged shift in trend, or at least the high probability that we're shifting the trend. And I think if I see that, then I'm going to feel like the volatility has truly made a real shift, because we can make these moves above the moving average and then dip right back down through it. We've done that a few times over the course of this year, and it hasn't had any follow through. I'm kind of looking for that period where we test the line or test the moving average or test the trend line and then turn back up. And I think if we have that, again, that really tells me that there's been sort of a shift in the mentality in the market, and volatility is truly moving to the upside. The most important factor about this is most times volatility will precede a decline in the market. So I want you to look at where this moved up and then tested the moving average. That was at the high for the market. So it's very possible that we need another rally in here. Market come back and test the moving average on the daily, or maybe fill this gap a little bit to get this volatility to drop and then turn back to the upside. So that's something I'd be on the lookout for. If the volatility just ends up dropping and working its way back down and going to a new low, then this is another kind of false move, exactly like what we've been seeing. So something to just keep an eye on. Again, it's a little bit different than the VIX, but I think it can be a useful tool. I'm actually going to X this out now because I want to focus in on these 4 charts. And I've got the monthly down here, weekly, daily up here, and then an hourly in the upper left. So let's just start with the monthly chart. One of the things that has happened here is that we're moving up, and I've got an 18 MA and a 40, and you can see how we're trending to the upside. Clearly have these moving averages rising, but notice how we've gotten some distance away from the 18-month line. It's gotten too extended, in my opinion, and created a little bit of an air pocket where you could pull back inside the trend without changing anything in the trend, but you could pull back. There's pullback risk. Now, we do have a rising ADX line. And so as long as that's rising, we don't have to fill all the way back down to the 18, but maybe to the midpoint between where it is and the 18, which would be somewhere around 4,000 to 4,100. But we want to watch as this is pulling in to see if the ADX stays rising. If that starts to roll over, then there could be a lot more risk in the market during this retracement. So that's kind of how I'd be looking at this. The trend is positive. We have decent momentum conditions, but it's overbought, and it looks like there's pullback risk in there at this point. Let's go to the weekly, because now we know we have an overbought market or an extended market on the monthly time frame, but notice what's taking place on the weekly. We've been making a nice orderly trend. The 18 and the 40 are moving up at about the same rate. We're not getting extended away from the 18. The problem we have here is that MACD was making new highs all along the way, and then it failed to recently. So on this leg to the upside, MACD has not confirmed. What's worse for me is that the ADX not only has not confirmed, but it is moving lower. It's been making lower peaks, and the last peak was made below 25, which tells me that there's a lot more risk in the market and it's essentially a sign that the buyers were drying up, because you can see the green line, which represents the buyers, has been making lower highs and lower lows, and now we're down below in a pretty low level. Now, what I have been saying in my reports, my weekly reports and my research, is that I've been waiting for the sellers to take over. And I had this trend line drawn in. And finally, when we had this first down week off this last peak, we broke above this horizontal trend line that I've drawn in. I've had that drawn in for a long time. I've been waiting for the sellers to kind of kick in. And so not only did it take out the horizontal trend line, it crossed over the green DI, and then it also crossed over 25. So we've got some pretty good strength in the sellers for the first time in quite some time. Really, the last time we did this type of selling was way back in 2020, before the market really got hit. Now, I'm not calling for another crash in the market or anything, but the symptoms are starting to develop where we're getting sellers start to take over for the first time, and it's a little uneasy when you look at it this way. It should give you pause right now. It's definitely, I think you should be a little bit more cautious about what's going on. So now we know we've got an overbought market, and we've got on a monthly time frame, and then we've got a market that's divergent or has losing strength on the weekly. We're sitting at the 18 week right now. And so I'm kind of looking for, like I was talking about with the ATR, I'm looking for a shift in trend. And so let's go to the daily chart. So we've broken the trend line on the daily chart, and we've made a move to the downside. And we do have red DI starting to show up here. Notice how this not only came over and held the green, but it broke above green here. So we've made a new high in green. We've got a little bit of volume showing up. Those are all signs that the sellers, again, are showing some strength right now. But what I'm looking for now is we've broken the trend line. And just like I was talking about with the ATR in the inverse, is I want to see a test of this area in some way, shape, or form. Now, that might just come in the form of taking out this prior peak or coming up and filling this gap, but some kind of a retracement where we get somewhat of a test. I mean, it would be preferable if we came up to the 18-day and then turned back down. And if we have that, then I think we have real signs that there's a shift in trend taking place on the daily chart. And so this is something that I'm on the lookout for. I actually prefer this to go up and test this area rather than just keep dropping. So one of the things I do want to mention is some things I'd be on the lookout for on the downside. So if we want to frame this out, I like to look at areas that were providing support, have provided support and resistance. So the last pullback found support right in this area, and it also found resistance, and that's right around 42.50. So I think that's the next really key level. If this rallies up and comes back down, that's the area. What's one area we want to be watching. Another area we want to be watching is around 4,100 to 4,000. So if I were to look at this, I would probably be drawing more like a triangle or a rectangle here in this zone between 4,100 and 4,000. So if we don't hold 4,250 and decide to come lower, I think this is kind of a key level to be on the lookout for. Now, that's assuming that we're not overbought or oversold coming into that area. I'm assuming that we're going to rally up and come back down. And if we're oversold coming into these areas, that's really where they become pretty important. Now, I'm not a big fan of just diving in when the market's going down. So what I like to do is go down to a lower time frame. And what I would do is go down to the hourly chart. And you can see that the hourly chart is clearly in a downtrend. And we're getting a rally this morning, but it's mainly because this was very extended away to the downside from its moving average. So if you look at the 18, look at how far away price got from the, now it's working its way back towards that. So somewhere around this 4,400 area, I think will be kind of the first key to watch. Do we get through 4,400? And if that's the case, then this is a rally that could end up lasting a few days. And that's kind of what I would be on the lookout for. If we've just rallied to this point here and it lingers a little bit and fails at the 18 and starts to move lower, then we should be on the lookout for immediate kind of reversal back to the downside. I like to use the trend shifts on the hourly because the volatility is shifting, so is starting to grow now. The size of the hourly bars are going to start looking like the size of the daily bars. And so you have to take that into account. And I think what we want to do right now is watch these shifts in trend. Notice the strength in the ADX right now on the hourly chart. If that stays strong through a rally, then we know that we probably have more downside coming. I would be watching this to help me determine how much downside we have as we make lower highs and lower lows. If price is making lower highs and lower lows, we want to watch the strength of the ADX. And as long as red DI is in command and the ADX line stays above 25, then I think we have more risk. But you want to use those areas that I mentioned on the daily chart to give you an idea of where to be looking for reversals on the hourly. So I hope this makes sense to you. You can post any questions that you want, but what I want to do is just make sure you frame out and understand there's still more risk in the market, but I'd like to see this develop into a 1, 2, 3 top. If that develops, then I think the risk increases, and we just have to be on the lookout for where these downside levels are. So that's the end of the Daily 5. I hope you enjoyed the segment. You can contact me through LinkedIn or find my research on rabilstockresearch.com. In addition, if you'd like to learn more about trend, MACD, and ADX in multiple time frames, I have a YouTube channel and a book called Invest Like a Pro, which delves into this subject. Have a great trading day, and we'll see you next time.
Hey, Grayson Rose here with StockCharts. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, consider giving it a like down below, maybe leave us a comment, and if you're new to the channel, you can subscribe at the link up above. We're gonna bring you daily content from an incredible collection of technical analysts and financial experts.